everybody. Welcome back to the Hello Goddess podcast. I am your host, Mandy Dea. I am a recently graduated naturopath, and I'm so excited today because I have a special guest all the way from Houston, Texas, Cynthia Croissant, and she is a personal trainer and posture and mobility coach. Did I say that correctly?
You did. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really honored to have met you the other day, and I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So I would love to know what got you into this field. Like, it's so interesting that you picked something so powerful and empowering for women.
Yeah, it must be almost 20 years ago now. I broke a toe and then I broke another toe. And when I
Okay.
broke a third toe, my doctor said, you need to get your bone density checked. And so we ran the test, and it turned out that I have thin bones. And one of the best ways to help build the bone density is to lift weights. So I went to my local gym and I hired the bodybuilder guy there. And he's like, you want to lift weights? I'm like, yeah, I want to lift weights. And he's like, how about we deadlift? And I said, okay, let's deadlift. So he set up the barbell and I go to lift it and I tweaked my back. And I really had no idea what I was doing. And he didn't know how to train me as a kind of middle aged lady. And he couldn't train me like he did the other young men that he was used to training. And so I was really dedicated to learning how to lift weights to protect my bone density for health reasons, for wellness reasons. And so I took it upon myself to go figure this out. So I searched different modalities, I searched kettlebells, I searched body weight training, I was looking into a whole bunch of different things. And I could find some things that were helpful. Like I would get better and I'd get stronger, and then I'd reach a plateau and I'd try to push through that. And every time I did that, I'd end up tweaking something, getting a bit injured, and then I kind of backslide. And I ended up getting this kind of constant tension through my muscles, soreness in my back, and it was always there. And I thought, I guess that's the way it goes because no pain, no gain, right? So I just lived with it. And I remember standing in a big line to go check out at a store, and I just could not even stand still. I had to do this little fidget dance to try to find a way to stand that my back could handle standing for that long. And I sought out different remedies to try to help. I did massage, I did chiropractic treatments, I did yoga, I did all the right things. I did the stretching, I did the back strengthening, and I could get a little bit better. And then I constantly would backslide if I tried to push it. But I knew something was off. I could just feel it in my body, and I knew my body, and I was like, I know that there's something that's off, and I could just find the key to unlock that. Everything would be so much better. I just knew it. So I kept on searching different, a little more obscure things to look into. And I came across biomechanics, and I never heard of that. But when I read about it, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And that makes sense. And that makes sense. So I got into it, I studied it. And one of the first things that they teach about is breathing. And I was like, okay, breathing, whatever. I think my breathing's fine because otherwise I'd be passed out. So, I mean, how bad could it be, right? But I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And what I learned was what I thought was okay breathing is actually not. It's actually disordered. And that was what I was doing. Like, this is good breathing. This is what I was doing. They are not the same, or efficient breathing. And because I was breathing inefficiently, that pulled my rib cage and had things, the joints get a little bit misaligned. And then that pulled on my muscles, and it ended up making my back work really hard because all the posture stuff was off. And so that made a whole lot of sense to me. And then when I kind of made the adjustments I needed to make from deep inside posture, the joint mobility, stuff like that you can't really see very well from the outside. I cleaned that up. All of a sudden, the bigger issues like my back tightness and all of that just evaporated, just got better. It cleared itself up, and I felt so much better. And I realized that nobody is telling people about this. Like, it took me
Yeah.
years to sort this out and really work at it until I learned it just by chance almost. And so I don't want other people to suffer with this because it's pretty easy to try to make some corrections that make a really big difference. And I hate seeing people suffering unnecessarily. So now I go out and I teach particularly women because a lot of times women are less sure of their bodies, and the fitness world has a model like when I started that was particularly set up for young men and for aesthetic purposes. And if that's not you, if you don't fit that mold, you're kind of out of luck, like I was. And so I want to help people who might be suffering the same way or potentially suffering or save them from suffering like I had to. So just
Mhm.
head off some issues for other people that I had to deal with.
Wow, that's really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And
Sure.
I find it so fascinating that a lot of people that go into certain fields, like for myself or Reiki and naturopathy, is they were trying to find the solution for their own health problems. It's like trying to find like what's going on like at the root. What's the real issue here? And it was like that for you. For some people, it's even like having a loved one that is suffering in some ways, and we're trying to find a solution for them. And it's like not everything is so mainstream. Like we really have to look at the body holistically and the different variables that come into our well-being. So I'm really surprised when you talked about how breath affects your body, your posture and your mobility, because I use breath work for my mental and spiritual health, but I never really considered it for the body. So that's really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, exactly. And the breathing and the posture and the mobility, they all play with each other, and even mood. Like when you are a little down, this is just human nature to be a little kind of hunched over. You kind of make yourself small and protect your sensitive middle section, and your head comes a little forward. And if you try that and you hunch over and then you try to take a deep breath, it's kind of hard. You have to really work at that. But if you sit up straight and you have your head up and everything is better aligned, and then take a deep breath, it's so much easier. And I had never really made the connection till I started to play around with it. And I'm like, yeah, it does. When you have better posture and better alignment, you have better breathing, you feel better. It's a way to kind of hack your mood, a little entryway to feeling better, to jumpstarting that. And also it can help with things like brain fog and other things too, just to breathe better.
Really, that's so interesting to me. And it's kind of like a feedback loop where you're like, if you use your posture to feel better, you feel better, and then you feel better, so your posture is better. And I kind of heard that similar approach with like faking your smile or a laugh. It's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like the way to bring joy into your life. And no, I find that really, really fascinating. I want to go a little bit deeper into like the women's because my podcast is really um about women's health, women's wellness. And I want to see, I would love to know, like, for you, what is one thing that you really see there is a huge difference within men and women when it comes to fitness? Like, is there a difference in the way we approach fitness?
I think so. I think that if you look at the business end of personal training, the vast majority of people who sign up for personal training are women. And so I think women are just generally more coachable, honestly, because men think they've got it figured out. They don't need coaching. There's a little bit of that. Or they learned how to lift weights from coach back in high school when they were on the baseball team. And so they always, they do what coach told them to do back in high school, and they don't need to know any new way of doing it. So I think that women are a lot more coachable, for first off. And I think there are hormone issues that go with a woman's body that a lot of times men just kind of gloss over, that are really things to take into consideration. Like at certain times of the month, your ligaments are a little more stretchy. So you got to kind of watch out for that. Like that kind of, I mean, physical impacts of things. I think that there's a definite impact of being pregnant. If you're working out when you're pregnant, that's a whole different ballgame. And if you've ever had a baby. It doesn't matter, like, when I started to figure all this stuff out, my baby was probably 10 years old, more than 10 at the time. And I was diagnosed with a separation in my abdominals, diastasis recti. And that was partly why I had some issues with my posture, because my abs were just like like a deflated balloon. They just weren't being super supportive, so that wasn't helping anything. But the whole world of, if you've ever been pregnant and you've had that stress on your body and your abdominals and your pelvic floor, and I think that, once you've had the baby and you've gone through all that, and a lot of times women will do some jumping or do some other kinds of thing, and there's a little bit of leakage that can happen, and it's a different, the whole pelvic floor thing is different, I think, with women, and require a certain sophistication for how to help women with that, so that it avoids things like leaking that men, I don't know, if you it happens all the time, and I don't think men know how to deal with that, quite honestly, like all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's so many, like you said, things that we don't always take into consideration when we're looking at a fitness plan or something, online that seems to be universal to everybody, but really
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into it, and it's nice to be able to see somebody like you who specializes in these things. So I would love to know, like, if somebody comes, do you do online clients as well or only
I
in
do.
person?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if somebody like me, for example, if I went to see you, how does that go? Like how do your sessions go?
Yeah. Usually I chat with people, even if you're just doing kind of a one-time session, I would chat with you just to figure out what exactly is going on with you. What's your goal? Like you said, the one size fits all fitness plan, you know, it can get you a little bit better, but really to achieve your fitness goal, first you have to be really clear about what that is. If is it weight loss? Is it bone density? Is it, I want to get my first pull up? Or like, what is your goal? And then you have to have a plan that's specific, ideally, a plan that's specific to reach that goal. And sometimes people hear that I'm a personal trainer and they just think, naturally, I'm some sort of drill sergeant that whips people into shape so that they can lose weight. And I have to kind of break it to them that, like, no, that's not really what I do. So even though you might see that on The Largest Loser or TV or something, that's not really me. There's a wide range of emphasis and specialties that fall under personal training. A lot of it is weight loss, and a lot of it is aesthetic goals, like I want a bigger booty. Good for you if that's your goal. Um, or I want to look good in a bikini. Sure, sure. Okay, I get it. But that requires a specific plan. And if you want to get stronger, if you want to build your bone density, if you want to move better and feel better, you want to align your posture, that's a certain plan to reach that particular explicit, specialized goal. So I chat with people just to be sure that they hear I'm a personal trainer, and they meet with me and they're like, I need to lose 20 pounds. And honestly, a lot of the times I tell them that's not really my wheelhouse, but I have a lot of people a lot of really specialists that I can refer you to, because that is their wheelhouse. So I just make sure that our goals are aligned. And sometimes there are people who think it's a good idea to work out. A doctor might have told them, or they just finished up physical therapy and they're told, you need to practice this, and they want to, but there's something, they're a little bit hedgy on actually pulling the trigger on it. Like they're not ready to really commit. And so I kind of feel out if people are really ready to commit, because what I do takes a commitment. This is something you gotta be really, to see the best results, you have to be really consistent. You can't be like scrolling TikTok and doing it at the same time. There's a lot of mind body stuff that you have to really tune into. And if that's not something you want to do, then maybe I'm not, maybe I'm not the best coach for you. So we figure out, what is your goal? Is it something that I'm the best person to help you reach? And, are are you a good person for me to spend my time coaching too? That kind of thing. And then the next step would be we do an assessment. I call it a mobility assessment where I look at how you're moving, where's the biggest sticking point. Like a lot of times it's people's pelvis is tipped or
Mhm.
their head is really far forward, or there's something that's a really big, that's the biggest flag. We need to get that flag removed before we do anything else. And then I write up a program that takes into consideration your goal and what you want and what you need, and then write it all up. And sometimes people want to do it on their own. And I'm like, if you have the willpower to do that, great. Here you go. And if you have questions, let me know. But sometimes people are like, you know what? I know that there's some subtle stuff going on and I need you to coach me and like look and see, are my ribs moving the way they should? Really the subtleties of live coaching. So then I'll go through the workouts with them. And I
Mm.
also do offer a small group weekly coaching class too. So there are different ways you can work with me, but that's the general process. And I do try to, the class, I see who's in the class and we try to give some particular coaching towards each person's issues and that kind of thing. But I do try to make it tailored instead of here's one workout and I just kind of give everybody the one size fits all thing. So I do make it very tailored to people.
Mm. So another thing I was wondering too, like let's say somebody's just the average woman watching, listening, what are some things that they can do to be more proactive when it comes to their health and fitness?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people just wait around. They kind of just wait for somebody to come fix them. I
Yeah.
had a friend and she was telling me that her shoulder, she had kind of frozen shoulder. It was hard to lift her arm up. And she went to the doctor and she was telling me that she was mad that the doctor said, we're not going to do surgery right now. I want you to try physical therapy and moving first. And she's like, why can't you just fix it? And I told her, I would be really hesitant to jump to surgery because that's a very extreme intervention. And a lot of times there are side effects that come with any kind of surgery.
Mm.
And there are a lot of people who do one surgery that leads to another surgery, and you just start down this path of needing more and more and more. And so I would definitely do the physical therapy first and give it a really good shot and do what I can to avoid this surgery. And I was like, it was such a foreign way of thinking that she didn't want to. She didn't want to do it. She didn't want to take responsibility and work and be proactive and like take on something that would prevent the surgery. She just wanted somebody to come along and fix her, even if it can cause other problems down the line. And I think that that is a mentality that a lot of people have. They just want to take a medication, they just want a quick fix, they just want they or people want to go to the gym and look good. They want to be the one who's jumping everywhere, and people look at them and they think, "Wow, you are really fit," and that kind of thing. Which it's fine if that's your thing, but it doesn't have to be that. And then I think that some people buy into the one size fits all mentality. Like they see the Instagram models, they see
Mm.
people who lose a ton of weight on TV or things like that, and they think that that is normal. And if they don't look like that, then they can't go to the gym or things like that. And so I don't think that I don't think that's healthy. And I think people need to know that that is not the truth. That's a myth. You can get a great workout at home and you don't have to look like a supermodel and you don't have to jump around like a crazy person so that people don't think that you don't belong in the gym or whatever you might be thinking. And I think that it's a myth to think no pain, no gain, because a lot of those people are the people who are getting knee replacements when they're 40 years old. So
Yeah.
your body's going to pay for that pain at some point. Maybe not when you're doing it when you're 20, but that bill is going to come due at some point, and
Hmm.
it's better to just not write that check in in the first place. And
Yeah.
sometimes people think that you have to have a super intense workout. You have to be like super sweaty, puddles on the floor, crawling out of the gym in order to have a good workout. But I don't think that's true. I think you can
Mm.
have a workout that progresses you to achieve your fitness goals and not be burned out and feel good overall. You don't have to kill yourself doing it. In fact, that's awesome. That's often a problem. You burn out your adrenals, you get injured. So I don't think that that's a good mentality to have either.
So true. I really love what you just explained there. There's two things I wanted to mentioned that you just said that I thought was really powerful there. You talked about like wanting a quick fix. That's something that a lot of people like maybe they're overwhelmed with life already and they kind of just want something to, fix their problem. But when it comes to true healing, it takes a lot of time and patience and dedication. Doesn't matter which field you're in, like and that's kind of the issue sometimes. Like we want to have, the solution right away, but oftentimes, for example, like you were saying, for a surgery, it causes more issues long term. So it's better to take your time and really, try to figure out like what works for you. And there's a lot of all or nothing mentality going on right
Yes,
now as well. So it's like, if I can't do my fitness routine exactly like this influencer on Instagram, then it's not even worth me trying. Like I just, it's very black or white, but your health is somewhere in the middle. Like everybody has their own level of fitness and you have to start with where you are, right? So I
exactly.
really, really like what you said there. I have a question for you. I have a rotator cuff injury. I've had that for a long time, and I think it's because I always have my bag on this arm.
Oh,
So I was
yeah.
wondering, like, what would you recommend for something like that?
Yeah. It's great that you realize that that's probably something that's pulling your alignment off. That's something that you want to avoid. A rotator cuff injury. I would say we can do things to improve your alignment, and that can go for any kind of thing. If you see a lot of times people, when you see them, they tend to have one shoulder a bit higher than the other one. You can see, or the head tilts a little bit, or one toe sticks out, or one is kind of straight. So you can, if you really look at for these subtle things, you can kind of pick up on them, and it's common for a lot of people, but it is something that is causing things to be a little bit off, and it can pull things like it pulls more this way on the one side and that way on the, and then it causes some shear force and that kind of thing that can cause injury if it gets out of control. So things that would improve alignment would be great. I mean, in your case and in a lot of people's cases, what I usually have people do is get the rib cage. A lot of times the rib cage is a little bit off, like I said, with the breathing. Sometimes it goes with the breathing and all that, but a lot of times people's rib cage, the bottom ribs kind of flare up, and that can cause things to get a little scissored with their
Oh,
pelvis, and also it can cause the chest to kind of be a little depressed, and this gets kind of stuck. And then if you kind of lean a little forward, hunch your shoulders, it pulls everything really tight across your shoulder blades, and then you're stuck from the front, and then you're stuck from the back, and it causes this kind of pancaking where it's really hard to move anything. So first thing I would probably have you do would be lie on your side. If you're lying on your side on something kind of hard like the floor, it can, like if you're pancaked from the front and from the back, then you end up in a more kind of an oval when
mm,
like your shoulder blades are meant to fit on something that's a little bit more circular, spherical. So if you lie down on the floor, it'll smush it and kind of pop it out like that. Then you go and you lie down on the other side, and it goes. And then you're more like this, and then your shoulder blade, which is meant to fit over this kind of more rounded thing, it can slide better. A lot of times that can help to kind of loosen things up enough that the shoulder blade can move, and then the whole shoulder joint can move a little bit better. So that would
that's
be something
fascinating.
to try.
That's so cool. I've never heard of that before. I had a little bit of physio done for it, but I'm definitely gonna try that out.
Yeah.
And also, do you have any like exercises that would be good for anybody that are listening today?
Yeah. I do have a freebie that I can send to you, and it's
Yes,
just things that you can do super fast, sitting at your desk. You don't need to get a
absolutely.
lot of what I do is crawling around on the floor. I'm not gonna lie. So if you don't like crawling around the floor, I'm probably not the coach for you. But what I found is that kind of take some of the gravity away because your body has these reflexes and you're gonna breathe. Breathing is gonna trump anything else. So if you're thinking I need to be all open, but your body's like, no, I need to breathe. The breathing is gonna trump however else you want to hold your body, and your body is going to want to be upright. So whatever else you're going to do, your body's going to find a way. But you can take that kind of fighting gravity thing away if you just lie down on the floor. So a lot of times you can kind of play around and discover things a little more easily if you're lying on the floor. So that would be it looks like you're just lying crawling around. So like a crawl on the floor, roll around on the floor kind of class. And I'm like, there is, I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of that. But okay, yeah, this crawling, rolling, rocking, kind of squishing one side to pop things open on the other side. That's what I would suggest people do. You can lie down on the floor on your side. Just make sure your head's not kinked up weird. Support your head. You don't want your neck to be sore on any of this. And you just lie on your side, put a pillow between your knees, bend your knees about 90 degrees, and breathe. That can do so many good things because a lot of times people's pelvis, the bones there in the pelvis, they get stuck like that. It's when you inhale, everything smooshes down and your pelvic floor kind of bulges out a little bit. And even the bones on the side of your pelvis will open. And a lot of times I get stuck like that. So when you lie down on your side, we talked about the rib cage. It also goes for the pelvis that'll squish the side of your pelvis in and then the side of your pelvis in. And if you exhale, that'll lift all that pressure off. So lying on your side on something a little harder, like the floor, and just breathing big exhales. Inhale through your nose, tongue to the roof of the mouth, and exhale more completely than you think you need to exhale. And you practice that a little bit and then see how you feel. I bet people would feel better.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard of this before. It's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll put all the links and everything in your freebie at the end as well in the
Sounds good.
description box. So if anybody wants to check that out. So we're already at the end of our interview. I wanted to go into our final two questions. So
Sure.
the first question is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would you say?
I would say, kind of along the lines of what I talked about earlier, be really clear on what your goal is. And when I was growing up, I wanted to help people. That was my goal. I wanted to get a good job and I want to help people. And what I realized was I wasn't super clear on what job, how am I helping people, all this stuff, and where do I want to live, and what kind of work life balance do I want? And what I've realized is the more clearly you can picture every bit of your goal and then work backwards for, okay, I'm here and my goal is here.
Mm.
If it's fitness, if it's getting a job or whatever it is, super clearly defined goal and then work backwards, and you get your path and then you stay on your path, and anybody who's trying to pull you off your path from the side, oh, you should do this, oh, this is a good thing, don't get pulled. Stay on your path. And if you know for sure you have a good reason why you want to do that and you're dedicated to it and it's super clear, I think that would be really helpful. That's what I would tell myself, be more clear.
That's such powerful advice. I didn't hear that answer before on the show. That's really powerful. I like what you said there. It's like, yeah, having that vision and working backwards, understanding where you're going, staying in your lane, and really believing in yourself. And that's so good.
Yes.
So what's your definition of a goddess?
My definition of a goddess would be somebody who makes these choices and she owns the choices. They're her choices. She doesn't second guess herself. Well, what about this? What about that? She's made the choice and she's happy with herself. She's happy in her own skin, her own body. And she's always trying to better herself. She's working to get better and better and better. And she can't help but lift everybody up around her.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this with all of us.
Oh, thank you so much, Mandy. I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. That was such an interesting conversation with Cynthia. If you want to connect with her, I'm going to put all her links in the description box below, sending you all of the love, all of the light, and the Reiki energy. Bye.